Hi everyone, and welcome to my Wasteland 3 character creation guide for new players. There's an overwhelming array of skills, attributes and abilities for your characters in Wasteland 3, and because there's no skill respec in the game, it's kind of important to build them properly from the very start. So I'm going to share some of my tips and advice, the kind of things that I really wish I had known sooner when I started the game. And if you haven't played Wasteland 3 before, do check out my review, link down below in the description. So, starting a new game, I would recommend playing on Wasteland difficulty for a first-time player. There's enough challenge, especially at the start, and it's kind of fun. Also, I turned friendly fire on mine for the simple reason that you do sometimes get in a situation where you want to shoot at something that's on your team, particularly if you've taken control of an enemy robot or something, and it's the last target left alive, and you want to kill it before it reverts back to enemy control. So you'll start the game with 2 player controlled and created characters. You can choose the default ones if you want to jump straight in, but it's much more fun creating custom characters. And as we talk you through the skills and attributes of the characters that you're going to create, bear in mind you won't just create these 2, you can, once you've got past the tutorial in the game, create many more and fill out the entire squad of 6 with custom created characters and spreading the skills around. So bear that in mind as we go through the skills and choices here. So, start with identification. You choose name, gender, voice, and background. None of these first 3 are important. You choose whatever you want. But when it comes to background, have a read through. Pick a theme for your character, how you have your character in mind, and pick one of these that's going to give them a bit of a bonus in something. Now, some of these, like the Mannerite, gives you a kiss ass +1. That's one of the skills, so you might want to come back to this after we've gone through the skills section and then reselect. You don't have to do this selection in order. You can do any bit first and go back and change something afterwards. Appearance is entirely up to you, entirely personal. Play around, make some ridiculous looking characters. It's loads of fun. I highly recommend anything crazy so that makes the characters stand out, but just have a little bit of fun. In fact, let's do that. Let's make a little guy there as our as our standard character. So starting weapon, it really doesn't matter what you pick. You'll get a very basic version of any of these guns, and you'll soon upgrade it with some better loot in the game. But come back to this after you've had a look and chosen the skills for your particular character, as it will give you more of an idea of what you want to begin with. Right, attributes. Let's jump into this because you'll get a few points to spend here and upgrade your character with. You'll also get a lot more as you level up. However, you don't get enough attribute points by the end of the game to have maxed out everything. So let's focus on the more important things here. So, coordination is one of those that's probably going to be important to all of your characters, as it determines the number of action points your character gets per turn in combat. As you can see here, as we reduce or increase the amount of points in coordination, our action points go up. You get to shoot or attack more or just move further. It's going to be one of those skills that you probably want to level up at least to some extent on all your characters. Luck is one of those attributes which is probably not going to be the highest on your list for any particular character build. Whilst it does increase penetration of your weapons slightly, it's not a big deal for that. It really gives you a percentage roll to get an extra lucky action, a lucky crit or something like that. It's not something that's going to really determine the course of the game, but it's like a bonus thing and it's not bad. However, there are probably more important attributes to focus on. Awareness is something that you're going to use on all your ranged weapon characters, as it increases your range damage bonus and hit chance quite a lot. Also notice here, on the range damage bonus, as we get higher up, the increases get bigger and bigger, particularly in the last couple of points that you spend on this. Therefore, maxing out one of these attributes is highly beneficial. Perception is also really important, and you should definitely focus on this for at least one character in your squad of 6 to get a high perception bonus to spot hidden traps, buried stuff, alarms and things like that. Now, whereas awareness works for ranged weapons, strength works for melee weapons and brawlers as well. And yes, it increases your melee damage bonus, also increases your throwing range and the number of hit points you get per level. So if you're going for a melee character, you definitely want to focus on strength, probably first above some of the others. Speed is another one of those skills, like coordination, that you'll probably want to level up almost to max, if not max, on all your characters, as it basically lets you move further per turn or per action point spent. And it's very useful for melee characters so they can get in nice and close. It's also useful for any ranged characters who are going to focus on close range weapons like handguns, shotguns, and submachine guns. As well as combat speed, it also gives you a very nice boost to evasion, particularly higher up, so it does have some defensive benefits too. Intelligence is actually, I overlooked this at the start of the game and I kind of regretted it, because its main thing that stands out is it gives you an extra skill point, which we'll look at soon, every 2 points of intelligence. However, its big bonus really is the critical chance and critical damage. Look how that crit chance, that top factor there, stacks up when we get to level 9 and 10 in this. Oh yes, that's a really good one to have on something like a sniper, a high damage weapon, or a weapon that fires multiple shots like a heavy machine gun. So that very quickly became one of my go-to attributes for pretty much all my classes. Charisma is something that you can probably get away without worrying about too much. It does increase your leadership range, your experience bonus. Leadership is a skill we'll look at in a bit that helps boost the abilities of your party members. The strike rate, now that's a little bit confusing because it has nothing to do with how fast you hit or how likely you are to hit. Strike is a special ability that builds up as you do normal attacks, and when it's full, you unleash a devastating special attack. So it is beneficial to increase your strike rate, which basically makes that special ability fill up faster. However, due to some of these other stats being so useful, I doubt you'll want to max this one out or have the points to do it. Personally, I found speed and coordination to be almost maxed on all characters very useful, intelligence to have a good few points in for crit rate, but really awareness for ranged and strength for melee. They're going to be your 2 priority ones. And remember, do bear in mind that you can create 6 characters for your party and many more characters that you can actually switch in and out of the party. So when we talk about spreading attribute points and skills around, bear in mind you're not going to have everything all on one character. Now, combat skills is automatically where you think of, yes, I want to put all my points into these. However, you won't have enough skill points to max out lots of different skills in the game. So for each character you create, focus on one style of combat and max that out. And maybe, just maybe on some, you'll need 1 or 2 points in a secondary style. Also note, when you're spending skills, look here, we've got 4 points remaining. It's not necessarily 1 point of skill for 1 skill point. It is on the early ones. These are nice and cheap to upgrade. It goes 1, 2, 3. And by the way, the tooltip there shows the cumulative cost of putting 3 boxes in this, not per box here. However, after the first 3 points, they become 2 points each, and then 3 points, 4. But yes, it gets expensive by the end. So automatic weapons are a good choice for a character, as there's plenty of assault rifles and a few submachine guns kicking around in the game. Assault rifles have good range, good accuracy, moderate damage. Submachine guns have lower range and accuracy. However, when you spec your character for them with the right perks, and you can see as I move the mouse over some of the points, the description over on the right shows different perks available. The submachine gun perks get especially good, and the further you are into the game, the more dangerous submachine guns become. Not so great at the start. But if you spec into automatic weapons, you won't need a secondary combat skill because you've got the submachine guns for close range and the assault rifles for longer range, making a really good combo. Big guns covers rocket launchers, flamethrowers, and heavy machine guns, all of which can be quite good fun, although I didn't find the flamethrowers as useful as I thought they were going to be. This is definitely a skill worth taking on one character, but they'll probably want a secondary skill, maybe automatic weapons, or more likely small arms, just so they can carry a pistol for that secondary close range attack, or when their big heavy weapon attack isn't going to be appropriate, like when all their allies are mingled in with the enemy, because heavy weapons generally do an area of effect damage. Now, brawling and melee combat are 2 different classes of weapons. Brawling is with fists and fist weapons. Melee combat covers blades and blunt weapons. You require the same attributes and stats for both, so just pick one style and go with it on any melee characters. And melee does work very well in this game, despite it being a cover-based shooting tactical combat thing. It was loads of fun, and there's loads of weapons, so have at least one melee character in your group. Now, I originally gave my tank a secondary skill in small arms so they could carry a pistol for when I didn't want to run them into combat. And that worked well at the start, so I did put 1 or 2 points in here to use basic weapons. By late game though, I was just pure melee with a different weapon in each hand for the situation required. Small arms covers pistols and shotguns. Shotguns, Not so great in early game. I found them really disappointing in early game. They are a cone attack weapon that covers an area of effect. They do a little damage to a lot of targets. However, late game, like submachine guns, with the right perks and the right character build, they become devastating with the top level shotguns. So bear that in mind. Pistols right from early game are very good. Shorter range, but good accuracy and work well. If you pick small arms, you'll probably not need to pick a secondary skill, but you will need to get a little bit closer to your targets to be effective. Sniper rifles are absolutely lethal, long-range, devastating killing machines. Loads and loads of fun. You might want a secondary skill in something like small arms to pack a pistol or a shotgun for when something gets too close, however, as a point-blank range sniper shot isn't the most accurate of weapons, and they don't have large clips generally, so you can find them empty in a fight, although reloading is cheap and easy. Right, on to general skills. Animal Whisperer allows you to tame animals that fight alongside you as a companion. You don't have direct control over them, and they sometimes are a pain in the arse and get in the way in a fight. But there are some animals that are pretty good, and they do distract the enemy's attention as well, and some do an insane amount of damage. Also, it should be said that these skills and a lot of the ones below also come into use in dialogue, in conversation as well, where you'll require a certain amount of score in any particular skill to open up a new option in the dialogue, which can be useful. So it's nice to have a mixture of these in the party, but there are some that just aren't essential, and I found Animal Whisperer to be one of those. There's just better skills to put your points into. Explosives was very good. This allows you to disarm landmines and traps that you'll find around the place. It does have some nice perks, and also increases the explosive damage of any character with this skill. So if you're going into like big guns that uses a rocket launcher, this is a nice bonus skill to go along with it. That's how I used it. First aid is not as essential as you might think, as long as you've got a character in the party that has a couple of points in this, so you can use the different healing devices. You don't need this on every character, and you don't really need to max it out, apart from the fact that there are again some dialogue options which require you to have a high first aid skill. Now when I say these dialogue options, there's always an alternative if you don't have the particular skill, but sometimes these dialogue options are shortcuts or will give you a different outcome to any given situation. Sneaky Shit is actually really good and is the essential one for disarming alarm systems in bases. But a byproduct of this is that you get a lot of sneak attack damage. Now, sneak attack damage is your first attack before combat starts. So if you attack a group of enemies before combat has officially started, that will get the sneak attack damage bonus. This is especially good for something like a sniper, who can initiate combat from very long range with a sniper rifle, well out of enemy detection range, get the sneak attack damage bonus, and if you've given them high intelligence for a big crit rate, you can often take an enemy out, a powerful one at that, if you get lucky from the very first shot before combat even starts. I didn't find the perks very good, but the actual skill itself was very useful. Weird Science is a strange one and allows you to play with sci-fi weapons and dangerous laser cannons and some bits of armor as well. Also increases your energy, fire and cold damage. I honestly didn't find a lot of use for that. There wasn't enough weapons in the game to make use of it, but there are some dialogue options where it would have been useful. Again, if you want to theme a character around that, you go for it. Now the exploration skills, like the ones above, do come in useful in dialogue situations, but there's also other uses for them as well. Armor modding being an obvious one, you get to improve the armor that you pick up, and you will need a certain level of skill in able to use certain better mods. So do build a character with this in mind and have a few points in armor modding. It's not so important early in the game, it's more useful later on. Lockpicking was an absolutely essential skill to me. You can crack into safes, you can open locked doors, it allows you to find different ways around the map, different routes through bases, allows you to come out in a different area to sneak attack the enemy, allows you to get into areas you shouldn't even be in, find extra loot. I couldn't imagine playing the game without it, and I would recommend focusing on this with one character fairly early on. Interestingly enough though, it doesn't need to be the same character who has the sneaky shit skill, but you can if you want. There's no harm in combining the two, being able to sneak around better and open locked doors. It does kind of fit with the theme, doesn't it? Nerd stuff is actually more useful than it sounds. It allows you to hack computers, which are going to allow you to open certain doors and terminals and trigger certain events in game. It also allows you to hack robots in combat. Now, early on, The hack robots ability doesn't seem to land very often. I had no joy with it. But later on, I was able to hack a robot which temporarily converts it to your side in a fight, and it landed a lot more often because I had some skill points spent in this, and I was able to hack pretty important big badass robots, and it did make the fights a bit easier. Probably more useful on harder difficulties than normal, but it is a good one to take. Mechanics is almost essential to take. There's lots of things to repair, lots of dialogue options, lots of areas of the game you won't be able to access without mechanics skill. It repairs generators and stuff which allow new doors to be opened that otherwise wouldn't be open. It also increases your damage versus robots, vehicles and synths, so it's exceedingly useful for that, especially if you tool one character up with the idea in mind of being able to nuke down robots really quick. I actually put it on my nerd stuff guy and then also specialise them with energy weapons, which tended to work quite well against such creatures. Survival. This was a skill that I didn't put priority into at all, although it does increase your damage versus animals and mutants. It also allows you to skip out of some random encounters on the world map as you're driving around. But as for the most part, those encounters will give you loot and XP. It's not always worth skipping them. Toaster repair sounds like the most ridiculous skill ever, and it kinda is. There are broken toasters around the game, and if you have enough skill points in this, you will get to repair them, and they'll reward you with additional loot. And the higher level ones do give you quite a nice bit of loot, but I don't know that it's worth investing 28 skill points into when there's so many other things. I repaired a few. I kind of wish that I'd spent the points elsewhere, but I didn't max it out, so maybe those level 10 toasters are worth it. Weapon modding works much the same like the armor modding, except it's more important and you will use it more often, and that some of the perks are more useful. So this is something you're going to want to level up to about level 8. Bear in mind there's an NPC early in the game that you can have join the party that starts off with a high skill in this, and really early game this isn't too important, but later on it becomes a lot more so. Social skills, barter. This is probably the most important, I think, and you want to be able to get someone up to level 7 in this to pick up this perk you can see on the right, the Antiques Appraiser. Basically, that means that a piece of junk that you sell has a random chance of actually being worth quite a lot, and it will make a difference. I found cash quite scarce in the early game, not so much in the late game, so having some points in barter is going to get you more cash for the crap that you sell, and that perk in particular will help. Also, a lot of the best guns and weapons in the game I found from vendors that I had to buy, so having more cash to be able to kit them out was definitely a benefit. Hardass is like an intimidation skill. At the moment there's no perks available for it. It is useful in dialogue options, and that's about it. So if you want to create a character that seems particularly intimidating and you think this fits in, go with it, but it has no use outside of that. Kiss ass is kind of the opposite. This is your flattery and buttering people up skill, and you might be able to persuade a few people with it. Again, no perks at the moment, but you might be able to avoid certain combat situations and fights by a bit of ass kissing. If you want to go with it, go with it. It's entirely up to you. It is something like hard ass that you can play the game without. And leadership it's kind of useful, but not that important, I would say. It does allow your nearby allies to a character that has this skill to get a bonus to their hit chance, as you can see. One of the other side effects of taking points into this, however, you can see the two perks that come up. Rally, which is really good, and Demoralize, which is also very good, especially if you have a character with heavy weapons. You'll see when the perks combine. There's a good heavy weapon perk that allows you to shoot down a lot of people at once that are demoralized. But Rally is really good because it basically gives the rest of your squad a couple of extra action points. Also, I'd just like to repeat once more that whilst I've mentioned a lot of skills that I consider important, don't forget you can play the game with any combination of skills you want to. You'll just get a different outcome, and you also get at least 6 characters to play around with, 6 in the squad and more back at base that you can switch in and out as you want them. So you can build all those different characters that you want with the different skills and switch them in and out for situations that you think you might need them more than others. So do play around. Do feel free to experiment with wild and weird builds. You'll have a lot of fun with the characters like that. And one last category, the quirk. Now this is an interesting one, and you may choose to take none whatsoever. Basically, picking a quirk boosts you in one area at some sort of penalty. So have a a read through and a hard think about any of these. And do bear in mind that the image you have for your character at the start of the game may not turn out to be what that character actually becomes once you realise how things work and how you get a feel for the different weapons. For example, I chose Pyromaniac on my character thinking I was going to be running around with a flamethrower setting people on fire. And I didn't, because I didn't like the flamethrowers all that much. It did give me the benefit of the explosive damage bonus, which was great on the rocket launcher, but it's just an example of how characters don't always end up the way you imagine them to be. But if you want to make a unique and interesting character, do consider the quirks, but just be careful which one you pick. But hopefully, what I've explained might have just made things a little bit clearer, because I actually had to start the game again after playing for 2 hours, because I realised I'd kind of spent my skill points not that wisely. Anyway folks, I do hope that has helped, so do let me know in the comments down below. If you're an experienced player and want to leave some more advice for new players to this game, again, leave a comment down below and help them out. Do go and check out my review if you haven't seen it already, and keep an eye out for more guides to Wasteland 3 that I might put up on the channel.